For a long time, my life felt like a perfectly calibrated instrument. Every part worked in harmony, designed for efficiency and purpose. At 26, I was Ruby, a psychologist with a thriving practice, a meticulously organized office, and a professional demeanor that rarely faltered. I navigated the intricate landscapes of human minds, charting their courses, guiding them toward clarity. My own path seemed just as clear, paved with purpose and anchored by a comfortable, loving relationship with my boyfriend. I was, by most accounts, exactly where I was meant to be. Then Piper walked into my office. She was 24, 2 years my junior, and beautiful in a way that defied convention. Her hair, the color of a stormy sky, fell in artfully disheveled waves around a face sculpted with sharp, intriguing angles. Her eyes, a startling shade of jade green, held a depth that seemed to challenge you to look away, and a glint of something untamed, a raw edge that hinted at stories untold. She favored dark, flowing clothes that draped around her slender frame, giving her the appearance of a modern-day rebel poet, utterly out of place in my calm, muted-toned sanctuary. From our very first session, Piper pushed against the edges of my well-established routine. She'd lean forward, those emerald eyes fixed on mine, asking questions that felt less like self-exploration and more like gentle prods at my own composure. "Dr. Hayes," she'd begun one Tuesday, her voice a low, melodic hum that always surprised me. "Do you ever feel like we're all just pretending? That therapy is just another stage for our performances?" I remember the warmth that would creep up my neck, a blush I always fought to suppress. It wasn't just her challenging nature, though that was certainly part of it. It was the way her gaze lingered, the subtle shift in her posture, the almost imperceptible smile that played on her lips when she managed to make me pause. I'd reach for my pen, my go-to anchor, and remind myself of my role, of the professional boundaries etched into the very fabric of my being. She was a patient, I was her doctor. Simple. Clinical. Yet there was nothing simple about Piper. She was a complex, beautiful enigma, and I found myself, despite every professional instinct, utterly intrigued. My professional life continued its steady rhythm. I had a full roster of clients, each presenting their own unique tapestry of human experience, and I approached each with the same measured empathy and analytical precision. Piper's sessions, of course, were always the wild card, a welcome disruption to the predictable patterns, if I was honest with myself. She continued to challenge, to provoke thought, and in some quiet corner of my mind, to subtly awaken something I hadn't known was dormant. My personal life, meanwhile, was meant to be the solid ground beneath my feet. Mark, my boyfriend, was everything I thought I wanted. He was charming, ambitious, with a steady job in finance, and had a way of making me feel cherished. We had a comfortable apartment, shared dinners, and plans for the future that felt both sensible and sweet. He was the anchor to my calm, ordered world, a warm presence that promised stability and unwavering affection. But you know how it is. Sometimes, even the most solid ground can begin to shift, imperceptibly at first. It started subtly. Mark's phone, once an open book, became a private fortress. Late nights at the office became more frequent, accompanied by vague, almost rehearsed explanations. I'd try to dismiss it, to rationalize, to attribute it to the stress of his workload. "He's just swamped, Ruby. Don't overthink it." But the quiet doubt in my mind grew louder with each passing day. It was like a tiny, persistent tap against a window pane, a sound you couldn't quite ignore, even when you tried to convince yourself it was just the wind. The unease began to bleed into my professional life. My meticulous notes sometimes blurred. My perfect focus during sessions would occasionally waver, a fleeting shadow across my concentration. I found myself staring blankly at my office wall, a knot tightening in my stomach. It was a sensation I rarely experienced, this profound lack of control, this feeling of something vital slipping through my fingers. I felt unwell. Not physically, not in a way a doctor could diagnose, but an inner sickness, a pervasive dread that clung to me like a damp, heavy cloak. I, who helped others untangle their emotional knots, felt utterly ensnared in my own. The quiet shifts in my demeanor didn't go unnoticed. My clients, for the most part, were too wrapped up in their own struggles to pick up on the subtle cracks in my professional facade. But Piper was different. She had always been an observer, not just of herself, but of me, of the space between us. Her challenging questions slowly gave way to a quiet scrutiny, those jade eyes no longer holding mischief, but a keen, unsettling perceptiveness. During one session, she leaned back in her chair, a pose I usually associated with resistance, but this time it felt different. Her gaze, steady and unwavering, settled on me. "You're not quite yourself, Dr. Hayes," she stated, not as a question, but as a calm, irrefutable fact. Her voice was low, devoid of its usual playful edge. "Your thoughts seem elsewhere." I felt a jolt. My heart gave a little lurch. I straightened in my seat, attempting to re-establish my professional barrier. "I assure you, Piper," I began, my voice, I hoped, steady, "my full attention is on you and our session." It was a clumsy lie, even to my own ears. My hands, usually so still, fiddled with the pen on my pad. Piper merely tilted her head slightly, a gesture that managed to convey both curiosity and an almost infuriating patience. "Is that so?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it felt like it filled the entire room. She didn't press, didn't argue. She simply waited, her eyes holding mine, a silent demand for honesty that cut through my carefully constructed defenses. It was as if she could see the swirling chaos beneath my composed exterior, the dark clouds gathering in my usually clear skies. The silence stretched, long and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. I found myself growing flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a profound sense of exposure. Here was my patient, usually the one dissecting her own emotions, now dissecting mine with an unnerving precision. It was disorienting, unsettling, and strangely, profoundly intimate. I felt a desperate urge to maintain my professional distance, but her gaze, so steady and empathetic, seemed to bypass all my practiced defenses. My carefully cultivated control felt like it was slipping piece by agonizing piece. The following session, Piper arrived with a stillness I hadn't seen in her before. She didn't launch into her usual intellectual sparring. Instead, she sat, her hands clasped loosely in her lap, and simply watched me. Her jade eyes, normally so vibrant with defiance, were soft, almost vulnerable. It was her quietness that finally undid me. I tried to start the session, to talk about her progress, to steer us back to the familiar, safe territory of her own psyche. But the words felt hollow, forced. My mind was a whirlwind of anxieties about Mark, about the crushing weight of unspoken suspicions. I caught myself staring at the pattern on my rug, then at the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, anything to avoid her gaze. Then Piper spoke, her voice a gentle current in the tumultuous waters of my mind. "Ruby," she said, using my first name for the first time, a quiet intimacy that both startled and soothed me. "What's truly going on with you?" She didn't ask about symptoms or diagnoses or coping mechanisms.
She simply asked about me.
The dam broke. The carefully constructed walls I had built around my pain, around my humiliation, around my fear, crumbled in that instant. My eyes welled up, blurring her face, blurring the room. A sob hitched in my throat, raw and utterly unprofessional. I found myself telling her everything, the strange hours, the guarded phone, the coldness in Mark's touch, the damning text message I'd stumbled upon, the undeniable, brutal truth of his infidelity. As the words tumbled out, ugly and painful, I braced myself for, I don't know what, pity perhaps, or worse, judgment. But Piper didn't flinch. She simply reached across the space between us, not to touch, but to offer a box of tissues. Her eyes, filled with an unexpected depth of compassion, never left mine. There was no "I told you so," no clinical analysis, no attempt to put a professional spin on my raw, messy heartache. She just listened, her presence a solid, comforting anchor in the storm I was weathering. In that moment, the roles reversed in a way I couldn't have anticipated. I was the one laid bare, vulnerable, broken. And she, my patient, was the one offering solace, a quiet, unwavering strength that felt like a lifeline. I felt a profound release, a surprising sense of safety I hadn't realized I desperately needed. The professional barrier, once a shield, now felt like a cage I had finally escaped. The days that followed Mark's departure were a blur of grief and numbness. My apartment, once a haven, felt cold and empty, echoing with the silence of absence. My carefully ordered life had been upended, leaving me adrift. I canceled my patient appointments for a week, a decision that went against every fiber of my professional being, but I simply couldn't function. I was, ironically, too broken to help others heal. It was Piper who appeared, unbidden, yet utterly essential. She didn't call and offer empty platitudes. Instead, she showed up at my apartment door one afternoon, carrying a thermos of what smelled like spiced tea and a comfortable, worn copy of a poetry book. She didn't ask if I was okay, knowing full well I wasn't. She just walked in, found me huddled on the sofa, and quietly sat in the armchair opposite, not crowding me, not demanding conversation. She would simply be present. Sometimes she'd read aloud from the poetry book, her voice a low, soothing cadence that filled the silence, without demanding a response. Other times, we'd just sit, sipping the tea, watching the city lights come alive through my window. There were no therapy sessions, no analysis, just a quiet, unwavering companionship. She'd leave a light meal on my counter before she left, a silent act of care that choked me up more than any spoken sympathy. It struck me then, with a profound clarity, that my patient was healing me. I, the psychologist, the one who navigated the intricate pathways of the mind, was being guided by someone I was supposed to be guiding. I began to observe her anew, seeing past the rebellious facade to the deep well of kindness and quiet strength beneath. I noticed the gentle curve of her mouth when she was lost in thought, the way her hair caught the light, the soft crinkle at the corners of her jade eyes when she offered me a rare, genuine smile. Her beauty wasn't just physical, it was an inner luminescence that radiated empathy and understanding. She didn't try to fix me, didn't try to rush my grief. She simply sat with me in the darkness, a steady, flickering flame of hope. And in that quiet, unassuming presence, I began, slowly, hesitantly, to breathe again. As the initial acute pain of the breakup began to dull, replaced by a persistent ache, my reliance on Piper deepened. She became a quiet constant in my otherwise chaotic world. We'd spend evenings at my apartment, sometimes talking for hours, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. Our conversations now moved beyond my heartbreak, venturing into shared thoughts, vulnerabilities, and unspoken dreams. She listened to my professional frustrations, my childhood anecdotes, my fears about the future. And I, in turn, learned about her, the complexities and nuances that lay beneath her rebellious exterior. There was a growing intimacy between us, an unspoken current that hummed just beneath the surface of our interactions. It manifested in small, almost imperceptible ways. A shared laugh that lingered longer than it should. The way she'd pause for a moment after handing me a mug of tea, her gaze softening as she met mine. The increasing ease with which we would sit close, knees almost touching on the sofa, the warmth of her presence a subtle comfort. My senses, once dulled by grief, sharpened, acutely aware of her scent, a faint trace of sandalwood and something uniquely hers, and the soft sound of her breathing beside me. My mind, ever analytical, tried to categorize these feelings, to label them, to put them neatly into a box. Friendship. Profound gratitude. Companionship. But the feelings burgeoning within me were far more complex, far more potent than any of those labels could encompass. There was a pull, a quiet, insistent magnetism that drew me to her, to the depth in her eyes, to the unexpected tenderness of her spirit. It was confusing, unsettling, and utterly captivating. The ethical implications of my feelings for a former patient, however, were a constant, nagging refrain. It was forbidden, a line I, as a psychologist, should never cross. My internal voice, usually so clear and rational, now felt muddled, overwhelmed by the quiet insistence of my heart. Every lingering glance, every moment of shared silence, every unspoken understanding intensified this internal battle. I was caught between professional duty and a burgeoning connection that felt both terrifying and undeniably right. The air in my apartment was thick with unspoken emotions one blustery evening. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the tumult inside me. We had been talking, or rather, I had been talking, recounting a particularly difficult day, a moment of doubt about my own path. Piper sat opposite me, her gaze steady, absorbing every word, every nuance of my distress. I looked at her then, truly looked at her. Her face, softened by the lamplight, held an expression of such profound empathy that it stole my breath. There was a quiet intensity about her, a silent understanding that made me feel utterly seen, utterly known. In that moment, the noise of the world, the echoes of my past, the anxieties of my future, all faded away. There was only Piper and me and the deep, shimmering connection between us. My internal battle, the struggle between my professional identity and the truth of my heart, reached a crescendo. All the arguments, the ethics, the societal expectations, they all seemed to dissolve, irrelevant in the face of this profound emotional truth. My training, my logic, my carefully constructed world, all felt secondary to the undeniable pull of her presence. Our gazes held, and a silent conversation passed between us, a language of pure emotion, beyond words. There was a subtle shift, a quiet lean forward from us both, a deepening of the shared moment. And then, without conscious thought, without a single word exchanged, we drew closer. There was a soft touch of lips, a breath shared, a moment suspended in time where two separate worlds merged into one. It wasn't a demanding act, but a gentle, profound confirmation, an acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us and everything that was now irrevocably changed. It was a silent promise, a crossing of a threshold, and in that brief, quiet moment, I felt an extraordinary sense of coming home. The morning after felt both surreal and utterly real. The rain had ceased, replaced by a sky scrubbed clean and bright, much like how my own inner landscape felt. The quiet touch we had shared had solidified something undeniable, making the unspoken suddenly clear. We sat across from each other, the remnants of last night's tea between us, and the air was charged with a different kind of energy, one of quiet anticipation and mutual acknowledgement. "Piper," I started, my voice still a little hoarse, "this is different now." It was an understatement, of course, but the magnitude of the shift was still sinking in. She met my gaze, her jade eyes soft, but with that familiar glint of determination. "Yes, Ruby," she affirmed, her voice a low murmur. "It is." We talked, haltingly at first, about the complexities, about our past dynamic, the unconventional nature of our bond. I confessed my internal turmoil, the ethical labyrinth I had been navigating. She listened, as always, with a profound patience, and then offered her perspective, not defensively, but with a quiet strength that impressed me deeply. She acknowledged the lines that had blurred, the boundaries that had shifted, but she also spoke of the genuine connection, the profound healing we had found in each other. This wasn't just about attraction, it was about something far deeper, something that had grown organically from shared vulnerability and profound understanding. My perception of myself, of my professional identity, was undergoing a radical reevaluation. The world, as I knew it, was being redefined. I was a psychologist, yes, but I was also a woman who had been broken and then, miraculously, had found solace and an unexpected love in the most unlikely of places. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with potential challenges, both external and internal. Society, my profession, even my own lingering doubts about stepping so far outside my comfort zone. But looking at Piper, seeing the unwavering belief in her eyes, I felt a strength I hadn't realized I possessed. We were two women, navigating an unknown landscape, but we were doing it together, our quiet strength amplified by our shared connection. The months that followed became a testament to the profound strength of our bond. Our relationship, once a forbidden undercurrent, blossomed into a vibrant, living part of our lives. We moved beyond the initial exhilaration of discovery, settling into a rhythm of shared lives, quiet routines, and mutual growth. My apartment, which had once been a space of solitude and then grief, transformed into our sanctuary, filled with the soft light of understanding and the quiet hum of two souls finding their true resonance. I found a completeness with Piper I hadn't known was missing. Her presence, once a source of professional intrigue, then unexpected comfort, now felt like the very air I breathed. She didn't just heal the wounds of my past betrayal. She helped me discover parts of myself I hadn't known existed, a capacity for vulnerability, a deeper well of care, a willingness to shed the rigid definitions of who I thought I should be. And in turn, I saw Piper, the once rebellious patient, shed her own defenses, revealing a tender heart, a fierce loyalty, and a wisdom that belied her years. Our conversations, once confined to the therapeutic hour, now spanned every aspect of our lives, rich with insight and shared perspective. There were moments, quiet and profound, when our connection deepened beyond words, beyond even that brief touch of lips. It happened one evening, as we sat close on the sofa, the city lights twinkling outside our window like distant stars. We weren't speaking, just existing in each other's orbit, our hands resting near, not quite touching. Her head was tilted slightly, her eyes closed, a faint smile playing on her lips. I watched her, memorizing the gentle curve of her jaw, the way her breath stirred a loose strand of hair. In that suspended moment, a profound intimacy settled between us, not a physical act, but a silent exchange of understanding, a merging of spirits that resonated in the deepest chambers of my heart. We were simply present, profoundly connected, our breaths mingling in the quiet space between us, a silent promise, an unspoken vow that felt more binding than any formal declaration. It was a space of complete trust, where every fear, every insecurity, every past hurt seemed to dissipate in the warmth of our shared existence. In that sanctuary we built, love wasn't just an emotion. It was a quiet, living entity that enveloped us completely. Life, has a peculiar way of unfolding. Ruby, the psychologist who believed in clear paths and logical progressions, found myself on a journey that defied every expectation. My professional life continued, perhaps with a subtle shift in my approach, a deeper understanding of the unexpected turns a human heart can take. But my personal landscape had been irrevocably transformed. The psychologist who had once held the tools for healing had been healed by her own patient. Looking back, the past year felt like a lifetime. From the controlled chaos of therapy sessions with Piper, to the quiet devastation of Mark's betrayal, to the slow, unexpected blossoming of a love I never saw coming, it was a tapestry woven with threads of pain, confusion, and profound beauty. Piper, once the rebellious enigma, was now my anchor, my confidant, my love. She had, in her own quiet, unwavering way, dismantled my carefully constructed world, only to help me build something far more authentic, more resilient, and infinitely more beautiful. My worldview had expanded. I understood, now, that love didn't always arrive in neat packages or follow societal scripts. It could emerge from the most unlikely connections, challenging preconceived notions, demanding courage and vulnerability. My identity, once so tightly woven into my profession, had broadened to include a woman who loved deeply, unexpectedly, and unapologetically. The journey had been arduous, fraught with internal battles and moments of fear, but the clarity that emerged on the other side was breathtaking. Our relationship continues to evolve, a living, breathing entity that we nurture with care and respect. We face the world together, two women whose paths converged in a most unusual way, now walking forward, hand in hand, towards an open horizon. The future isn't a fixed point, but a vast expanse of possibilities, waiting to be explored. And with Piper by my side, I know, with a quiet certainty, that whatever comes, we will navigate it together.